this room are masked at all times that you're moving around. That if you obtain a drink, please take it to your table. Do not walk around with either food or drink. And that includes wearing your mask and pulling it down just to eat. You have to be at a table to consume alcohol or food. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Okay, I should be sending something to the press right now. Should be sending something to the press. I should be sending now. 221212 221234567891012345678910 12345678910 12345678910 12345678910 12345678910 12345678910 12345678910. They getting anything? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Two, two, two. Yeah. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 2, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Where's his audio? Just stand by. Whereabouts the audio jack on the camera? Apparently it's in the back.
So what do we? Oh yes, sorry. It's in on the side. It's a little nip on the back there. I think it's on the right side, and it's a spot.
2, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. He's not seen an 1/8 inch anywhere. He's coming up there, I think. Or maybe not. He said on the right-hand side. Yeah. I think he's coming to you. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. Okay, good. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2. I guess stand down for a sec. Okay, but you're all good, right? Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay.
All right, great.
So this is going to be.
1, 2, 2. 122, 122, 122, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, everyone else is working fine? Okay. All right, great. Okay, good. Okay, great. Sounds good. 122, 122, 122, 122, 122, 122, 122, 122. 122, 122, 122, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 122, 122, 122, 122, 122, 122, 122, 122, 122. Awesome, thank you. 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a guy coming to you right now. Just for pool sound check. Yeah.
One, two, three. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. Yeah, I am. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. Great. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. Great.
We're all good then? Okay.
This will be the last protocol announcement. We will be starting in a few minutes. We're just waiting for the registration line to finish off so that we can have everyone in the room. But to remind you, masks are required at all times. If you take a drink from the bar, you cannot take your mask off until you sit down back at your table. Similarly with food, please keep your mask on until you get back to the table. And we would appreciate if you would not wander about with a drink or with food, but maintain yourself at the table. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. My name is George Orrell. I'm the chair of the Leadership Election Committee, and I'm pleased to be your Master of Ceremonies for today. Welcome to the 2021 PC Manitoba Leadership Election. I would like to begin the proceedings with an acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered here together on Treaty 1 lands, the original territories of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, Lakota, Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We will begin with the singing of O Canada. If you all please rise. are here for a truly momentous occasion. In a province where we have made one member, one vote into a true democratic principle, we have in this province and in this party determined that there are two very qualified people that we wish to put forward to vie for the leadership of our party and for the leadership of the province. Both of these qualified individuals are women, which will lead to the next part of the momentous occasion, and that this will lead to not only a female leader of the party, but the first female premier in the province. Those of you that were here a little earlier may have seen that we had quite a few demonstrators out front. Fortunately, they were not united amongst themselves and got tired of yelling at each other, and they've all left. You may notice that this convention is unlike others. We don't have the hoopla. There's no balloons. There's no people walking around and singing. And that's because this is a working convention. This is like the Sunday before the Monday. We gather here to choose a leader, but at the end of today, that leader goes to work tomorrow to keep this province going in the direction that it has been, and that's always been for the better. I'm going to call upon one of the co-chairs of the Leadership Committee, and that's Ray Wagner, to introduce our guest speaker. Ray?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce our 23rd Premier of Manitoba, the Honorable Kelvin Gertzen, who is here with us today. Woo-hoo. Now, we all know that he has had many roles in the government since he was first elected in 2003 as MLA for Steinbach, and I'm sure we're all familiar with them, so I won't go into details. But the one thing I wanted to mention, the biggest role that I noticed, having worked with him, and stood out the most for me over the years, was his dedication and role as father and husband. So the dedication to his family was always very apparent to anyone who ever has the opportunity to work with him. He would take the opportunity to talk about them, involve them, and just represent them whenever he could. It was nice to see and very admirable. But I also must mention his dedication to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So I feel that I need to mention the fact that the Bombers have not lost a game since he's been Premier. Am I correct? Quite an accomplishment, I would say. But yeah, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Premier of Manitoba, the Honorable Kelvin Gertzen.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here this afternoon together with my wife, Kim, My son Malachi is playing volleyball today, so I feel that maybe that introduction about being such a great father isn't so good because I'm missing his volleyball game today. But Kim, I think, is able to live stream the game a little bit. And so if all of a sudden you hear her cheer out loud, it's not for me or for my speech. It might be for my son in the volleyball game. Tonight, our party and our province is going to make history. We are excited about today, and we are ecstatic for what our future holds. Let me begin by first thanking everyone who has helped to organize this leadership race, from the leadership committee to the volunteers at 23 Kennedy over the past 2 months, to those who have been counting the ballots here all day today. It is never easy to organize a leadership race, and it doesn't happen without an incredible amount of dedicated people, too many to name, but too important not to thank. And please, can we give them a round of applause of thanks? Of course, to the two leadership candidates and their teams, we all know how difficult it is to be involved in any election, and a leadership election in itself is unique. But both candidates and their teams have worked hard with connecting with Manitobans and our members. The democratic system does not happen by default. It happens because people answer the call, they give of their time, they give of their resources, and they get involved. Thank you to both candidates and their teams, and let's thank both of the candidates and their teams for being involved in this election. And to our members, now 25,000 strong, I understand, members of the Progressive Conservative Party of Manitoba, thank you for participating in this one-member, one-vote election. And your memberships are good until after the next election, which means we want you to stay involved because there is another election coming soon that is just as important as the election that is happening today. Today, a new chapter begins in the history of the PC Party of Manitoba, and it is already a book that is rich in achievement. Over the past 2 months, I've had the opportunity, and I want to tell you the humble honor, to work in the Premier's office in room 204 in the Manitoba Legislature. It's one of the historic offices of the building, which means that every Premier since that building opened in 1920 has occupied that specific space. And it was hard not to think of the incredible moments and decisions that happened in that office. Premier Duff Roblin negotiating off of that desk in the 1950s and the 1960s the construction of the Winnipeg Red River floodway that, despite opposition, saved Manitobans billions of dollars in the decades to come. Of the discussions had by Premier Sterling Lyon as he worked to support Canada bringing home its Constitution and the development of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Premier Gary Filmon negotiating with the federal government in the mid-1990s to give Manitoba more control over immigration that resulted in the 1998 provincial nominee program. That program, which celebrated its 20th anniversary just a couple of years ago, has seen nearly 150,000 people come from around the world to call Manitoba home. A visionary move that literally changed the face of Manitoba and making Manitoba one of the most diverse provinces in Canada. Of the challenge that the government led by Brian Pallister faced in returning Manitoba's books to balance and ensuring the finances were fixed while reducing the provincial sales tax. Those are just a few of the leaders who are proud to call themselves progressive conservatives and who we proudly called Mr. Premier. And while that visionary leadership will continue under our new leader, we will no longer call them Mr. Premier. For the first time in the history of our province, we will have Madam Premier in that historic office in the legislature. And I can tell from that applause that you feel like I do, that it is about time it is a glass ceiling in Manitoba that has long needed to be shattered, and it's shattered here tonight. And while I am proud that it is happening in Manitoba, and I truly am, I am especially proud that it is happening as a progressive conservative in Manitoba. And yes. And as that new leader, Madam Premier, begins to set her own legacy and a new course for our party, there is much reason for optimism. Over the course of the past 2 months, I have met with hundreds of Manitobans, some of whom I've been honored to host in the Premier's office, which is really Manitoban's office. I've met with many others on visits around the province, from as far south as the Peace Gardens to as far north as Churchill. And overwhelmingly, Manitobans are looking to engage with their elected leaders, are looking forward to emerging from this pandemic, and believe in the future of Manitoba. And it falls to us to meet Manitobans where they are, to be quick to listen and slow to speak, to hear both their concerns and their ideas of how to move Manitoba ahead. And it begins with engaging with Indigenous leadership. My first calls on the day that I was sworn in as the office of Premier, the 23rd Premier, was to our Grand Chiefs and to the leadership of the Métis and the Inuit communities. Success for our province cannot happen unless we engage in meaningful ways with Indigenous leadership and ensure that they are heard as decisions are made. On the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which our province was quick to recognize, I joined many others at St. John's Park, and together with my son Malachi, we participated in the powwow. We did so with New Democrats, we did so with Liberals, and we did so with other progressive conservatives as we pledged ourselves to engagement, respect, and reconciliation. Indigenous leaders want respectful dialogue, and we must respond. Over the past 2 months, I've had conversations with many municipal leaders, the Mayor of Winnipeg, the President of the Association for Manitoba Municipalities, the Mayor of Brandon, the Mayor of Steinbach, the Mayor of Thompson, the Mayor of Churchill, and many more. Each of these leaders cares deeply for the communities that they represent, and they are at the table to work with us in partnership with our government. We share the same goals, bettering the lives of all of our residents, and we are working towards the same thing. In the Premier's office, I was honored to welcome representatives of the Filipino community, the India community, the Jewish community, the Ukrainian community, to name a few. They told me how Manitoba has become their home of opportunity and inclusiveness, how they deeply value and want to preserve their cultural background, but in the context of their love for Manitoba. I also met with representatives from the faith community and heard how difficult the past 18 months have been and how their faith has not been diminished because of it. Far from it. For most, it has enhanced their understanding of how important their faith is and renewed their commitment to all those who freely enter their houses of worship. In meetings with End Homelessness Winnipeg and those who've lost loved ones from addiction, they told me that not all Manitobans are sharing equally in the promise of Manitoba, and that we cannot, as progressive conservatives, forget those who do not have a voice and cannot advocate for themselves. In calls and meetings with business leaders, they express how difficult this past year has been for themselves and for their employees, but they also express deep, deep gratitude for Manitobans who rallied behind them and became champions for local business. And in each of these meetings, and many more I don't have time to describe, there was a common theme, a desire to improve Manitoba and a desire to stay connected with their government. Of course, engagement doesn't always mean agreement, nor does it mean that every problem can be solved, but every solution begins with a conversation. Every advancement involves mutual respect, every interaction must involve as much listening as it does talking. And I know, and I see it in this room tonight, that the party that built the floodway, that supported the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that opened the door to hundreds of thousands of new Canadians, that values hard-earned money, is the party that has and will continue to engage with Manitobans, regardless of where they live, what they own, who they know, or where they were born. It is what progressive Conservatives have always done and what we will continue to do under the next Premier. This is the party of opportunity. It is the party that gave a former legislative intern who grew up in government housing in a single-parent home the ability for 2 months to become the Premier. And it's the party that wants every Manitoban to succeed beyond their dreams. In only 2 months, I was fortunate to have a few memorable Manitoba experiences, uniquely Manitoba experiences. Among them, I was able to take the train from Thompson to Churchill, 16 hours. It gives you time to think. And there are many stops to allow area residents to unload food that they bought in Thompson at their homes along the train route. But on one early stop, I didn't really see any other communities, so I asked the train operator, one of the VIA attendants, why had the train stopped? I was told that it was a flag stop, meaning that somebody on the side of the track had flagged down the train, so the train stopped. It is the most Manitoban thing in a world that you can flag down a train and it stops. If you haven't taken that train from Thompson to Churchill or Winnipeg to Churchill, you need to take it. It'll take your time, though. In Churchill, we hosted diplomats from the United Kingdom, Iceland, the United States, and India, and the representatives from those 4 countries left inspired to tell their residents to come to a little place on the shores of Hudson Bay called Churchill in a province called Manitoba because they saw its beauty. Yeah, they saw polar bears, but they saw a lot more than that. They met a community of people who desire to preserve nature, culture, and their community. They truly left awe-inspired by how incredible Manitoba is. Sometimes we need to hear it from others before we believe it ourselves, but Manitoba is an incredible place. I also had the opportunity to celebrate with Manitobans. Together with the PC Caucus members, we invested the 2019 Grey Cup champion Blue Bombers into the Order of the Buffalo Hunt. It was a bit delayed because of COVID, but we waited a long time to celebrate the Grey Cup that we won. So we're going to hang on to it for a bit longer. And I would like to echo my introductory comments. I have no intention of trying to influence the next Premier on how she does her job, but I will say this, that Bombers were undefeated under my reign, and that better continue for the rest of the year. Manitoba Progressive Conservatives are committed to working with all levels of government to better our province, working with municipal councils, other provinces, and the federal government. I appreciated the calls that I had with premiers from across the country over the last 2 months, and where we could help other provinces struggling with the pandemic, we did, because that is what neighbors do. And we as provinces renewed our commitment to obtaining a fair and sustainable healthcare funding agreement, making it a priority among all provinces for a next meeting with the Prime Minister. In my call with the Prime Minister after the federal election, Manitobans' position remained clear that this funding agreement is a priority. Can I tell you a story about how the call went? There's no media here tonight, is there? No, there's not. After congratulating the Prime Minister and having some discussion about infrastructure, I reiterated the need for a better funding agreement for healthcare with Ottawa, and Mr. Trudeau began to respond, but the line started to cut in and out, and then suddenly it was disconnected. A few minutes later, the PMO operator called back into the line and reconnected the Prime Minister, and so Mr. Trudeau asked me where he was when he was cut off, and I said, Mr. Trudeau, You were disconnected right at the point that you promised to increase healthcare funding to provinces by 30%. It's a true story. He paused for a second and he said, "Yeah, that's very funny, Kelvin," and then he carried on. But it's as close as we've come in 5 years to an agreement, so I'm taking that for something. We are committed to and continuing to work with Ottawa and being a cooperative partner in Confederation, because Manitoba has always done that, and our next premier will continue to as well. But as hard as we were working with Ottawa, we were also working 10 times as hard as home. Your caucus MLAs, your progressive conservative MLAs, are dedicated, hard-working group of men and women, and during this past 2 months, they've worked incredibly hard despite the fact that there was a leadership race happening. They announced many new healthcare capital projects, passed legislation that better supports those living with disabilities, announced funding to protect and preserve Manitoba's parks, helped settle a long-term and fair contract agreement with Manitoba's nurses because they deserved it, empowered pharmacists to better assist in the fight of COVID-19, established support for Indigenous vaccine clinics, approved new drugs to help those dealing with cystic fibrosis. I don't have enough time to tell you the great work that the MLAs in this caucus did, not just these past 2 months, but over the past years, and they'll do it in the next 2 years, and please give them a hand because they deserve your support. In December of 2019, we kicked off our Manitoba 150 celebration at the Manitoba Legislature, and not much in terms of that celebration went as planned since then. The past 19 months has truly been a challenge of a lifetime. Sadly, in many ways, the pandemic has tested families, it's tested communities, it's tested friendships, it has strained our healthcare system, it has strained our healthcare workers, it has kept us apart, and it has cost lives. We are all tired of COVID-19 and the pandemic. But it has also shown us some things. It's shown us how much we care for each other, how we value our local businesses, how much maybe we took some celebrations for granted, like Folklorama or the Dauphin Ukrainian Festival, or Steinbach's Summer in the City Night I would invite you to attend, or the Trappers Festival. Unlike the flood of 1997, during the pandemic fight, we were not shoulder to shoulder on a sandbag, but we were millions, sometimes it feels like millions, but we were miles apart by Zoom. Yet today, and we're not done, there are reasons for optimism. We are cheering our Bombers on in person. We are yelling True North at Winnipeg Jets games. We're reconnecting as families and as communities. We were able to enter our houses of worship and celebrate special occasions. And now, as we hopefully are rounding the bend on the pandemic soon, and also we need to ensure that we are healing wounds, checking in on one another, making sure that friendly isn't just on our license plates, but it's back in our communities. The pandemic tested governments and people in a way that we have never seen in our lifetime before. And as we look to emerge from it, we have to do so as a province that is united, that is not just prepared to be happy that we got through it, but that is prepared to build a Manitoba momentum that lifts all Manitobans. But for us to be united as a province, it needs to be led by a government and a party that is itself united and focused and driven to be better every day. Tonight, you have likely entered this hall supporting one leadership camp or another. As I started, let me again thank you for being part of this democratic and historic night. But as you leave here, regardless of who the winner is and whether or not it was who you supported when you walked into this hall, please remember that we do not leave as camps who won or lost, because we must leave here as progressive conservatives united to govern for all Manitobans. We must leave here united and filled with optimism, excited for the possibilities, and committed to achieving greater things together. I hope you've noticed, but there is something that I have not spoken about this evening. I have not spoken about our political opponents, because tonight is not about them or what they might do as a government or what they might plan to do as an opposition. It really isn't about them. The future of Manitoba and all of its promise does not rest in the hands of the NDP or the Liberals tonight. It rests in your hands. Tonight you will elect the first female premier in the history of Manitoba, and she will stand on the shoulders of those progressive conservative leaders who came before her, who protected us from floods, who valued our rights, who welcomed people from all over the world, and who helped fix our finances. And just as those leaders accomplished none of those things without the support of others, neither can our new leader achieve her promise without you. We have a task ahead of us to unify Manitoba after a 1 in 100 year pandemic. And we will do so as a unified party behind a strong leader, building upon the legacy of a party uplifted by progressive conservatives from every corner of this province. And it begins tonight, and it begins with you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me conclude with a word of genuine thanks. 2 months ago, the MLAs of our caucus, my friends and my colleagues, asked me to take on a short-term assignment. I was honored to be asked, and I was honored to serve. Growing up in a single-parent household after my father died from his addiction when I was 11, I could never have imagined such an opportunity. When I started in the legislature in 1996 as an intern, I thought I had reached the peak of my political career. So while my contributions will be a footnote in history, it will always be a highlight of my life. For my wife Kim and my son Malachi, we have enjoyed the experience greatly. Manitobans welcomed us into their homes, into their communities, ceremonies, powwows, pipe ceremonies, onto dog sleds, onto trains, and even tundra buggies. In 2 months, they have inspired us in ways that will last a lifetime, and we thank you. My fellow progressive, conservative friends and family, tonight we make history, and in the days and weeks and months and years ahead, we will make Manitoba better for all Manitobans, because we are Manitoba, forever strong, forever optimistic. Thank you very much. Let's make history tonight.
Hello everyone, I'm Liz Reimer. I had the privilege of sitting on the LEC committee. It was a very interesting last 2 months, that's all I can say. But I want to thank Premier Gertzen for the words that you shared with us this evening, and also for all the things that you have done as your short time as our Premier of Manitoba. You have provided stability in a time of transition for our party and government. On behalf of the entire PC party, we thank you and your family for your service as our Premier. Not only have you provided a time of stability in your short term in the office as a Premier, but you have accomplished, and this has been pointed out a couple of times this evening, or this afternoon, the singular feat unique to every Premier in the history of Manitoba. On your watch, the reigning Grey Cup champion Blue Bombers haven't lost a single game. They've clinched first place in the West and could very well be headed back to the Grey Cup in December. In order to recognize that, we want to get you geared up for the playoffs and point all of us toward the party's objective in 2023. So David and Phil are going to come up, and from the LEC, we just want to give you this small token of appreciation.
While sitting at my table, the Premier came up and passed around his business card. And I thought to myself, I know who you are, and I'm not going to need anything from you in a couple of days, so what do I need your card for? But then he said, this is going to be a collector's item. And I knew he was right because I saw David Asper ask for 2. We are fortunate that we may be only about 15 minutes away from being able to announce the results. In that time, I would like to give you a report from the Leadership Election Committee. We'd been asked a number of times throughout the last 2 months what was going on. And it was our belief that we should not be reporting through the media or providing you with interim reports on whether we were doing well or whether we were not doing well. We are here to tell you now, and to alleviate the concerns that you may have heard or read about an incompetent campaign, about a disorganized campaign, about a campaign that disenfranchised people. I would like to begin with this one undisputable fact. We began on August 23rd when we took this over with 5,500 members. Within a matter of 3 weeks, we had over 25,000 members. $25,000 memberships that came in some booklets in handwritten form, on some spreadsheets that came from campaigns, from people coming and dropping off applications. We didn't take and stick them in a bag. Every one of these had to be placed into our database. We worked overtime, we hired additional staff, and we inputted every one of these memberships. Now you remember, when you input, you only are able to input what you have. We did not have the resources to second guess or to go through these memberships. We got them into our database in time. We then took that database and we hired one of the best distribution companies in Manitoba. They took these memberships, put it into their database, took that database and compared it through the software available through Canada Post to determine that they had the right mailing addresses. We were told that if we obtained 96% accuracy, we would be doing very well. The printers printed an envelope with the name of each member on the front of the envelope. The envelope had a secondary envelope that was post-paid. That document had a PIN number on it that went to the member themselves. That second envelope also contained a smaller envelope to include the ballot. These were then sent out by mail, and true enough, we attained approximately 96% success in delivery. The problem is that we are in a time of COVID, and it has restrictions that are placed upon people. We didn't start getting the return to sender envelopes for almost a week after we'd sent them out. And they continued to come in without any ability to address how quickly we were able to get them or where we got them from. In fact, a couple of days ago, we received an envelope marked undeliverable, and it was from our very first mailing. That's the first indication we had. Each one of these that came back was not simply a matter of readdressing them. We had to go back to each campaign and verify where the address came from. We had to go to our own records and see whether or not they had been done properly. But what we did is every single envelope that came back undeliverable, we got out again. Every envelope that came back with a ballot arrived at our headquarters. No ballot ever touched the hands of a PC office member. Anything about envelopes going missing or not being distributed are false. We hired a security firm, Paladin, who met every delivery at our door, took the ballots, delivered them themselves to our accountants, Scarrow and Donald, who were also doing the audit. These were then placed into a secure, locked room at Scarrow and Donald. Once the ballots were received in that secure room, we had a series of volunteers, but not just volunteers, we had to hire additional staff in order to deal with the volume of ballots that came in. Every ballot had to be verified as to the PIN number, it had to be verified as to the ID, and only then was it placed in its envelope, sealed envelope, into our ballot boxes. This was a chain of control that went from the day that we sent out the envelope to the day that it was put into the ballot box. And there were no exceptions. No one got to put ballots in that didn't go through the main route. Halfway through the election period, we began receiving requests from people who said, we did not get a ballot. These were people that were on our mailing list and the mailing had gone out. Every one of those people that we received the name, we then dedicated a crew of people who checked to make sure that we in fact had not received that ballot based upon the PIN number. And once we were satisfied that it had not come in, we presented another ballot to these people. And we replaced over 1,000 ballots that we confirmed had not been received, and we did it in a proper way. That nobody just walked up and said, I need a ballot, and we gave them a ballot. We printed up over 1,000 ballots to be used to replace. And the problem was that many people didn't know that the deadline was fast approaching. And we would get calls days after it was able to have these mailed. And we set up systems, along with the campaigns, who helped very, very carefully with this to ensure that these ballots could go out and get into the hands of the people. And I'll tell you that yesterday, my entire committee gathered themselves up first thing in the morning, and we drove throughout Manitoba carrying photocopiers, carrying ballot boxes, and advising the people that we would be in a certain center for them to come and pick up the ballots. That's not being disorganized. We were told by these people outside of Winnipeg that we had delivered these ballots to how grateful they were that we had taken that step to bring their ballots out. So we have somewhere in the area of approximately 17,000 ballots returned. To give you an idea of what that means, in the last leadership convention in 2006, where we had mail-in ballots, we had 13,000 votes. 13,000 members. Our membership had totally increased since then, but on a percentage basis, we have exceeded the percentage of people that were allowed to vote and got their votes in. We are over 65%, and any of you who have ever worked on an election knows that a return of over 60% on your election with the ballots is something to be proud of, not something to be ashamed of. We admit that we were not able to get all of the ballots out to those who may have been entitled. Due to the fact that we were working off a database, there were instances where a member was not in the database. And when someone says, well, tell us how many people you didn't have, you can't answer that question. They're not in our database. Until we're contacted and told, we can't do anything about it. So I want to assure you that we took on this responsibility knowing full well that there were rules. These rules were set by Executive Council, which is the group that is responsible for running this party in between annual meetings, representative of all of the different groups within our party. They set the rules, they set a date, and they gave us the job, and we accepted it. And we at no point ever thought that we would do it in a way that was not fair, that was not transparent, and did not require us to give 100% to the very last day that we were able to do it. So I want to assure you that no system is perfect, but ours was very far away from inept or disorganized, and that there's no one who was deliberately disenfranchised in this process. I hope that that answers some of the concerns and some of the questions that have been raised throughout. And I would now like to take an opportunity to introduce you and to thank the members of our committee. From staff, and if you're here, please stand, Keith Stewart was our main operating person on the campaign. Keith is a long-time worker, CEO at 23 Kennedy. He had gone over to the political side and had been there. We got him back. He took a leave of absence from his job to work solely on making this election work. He had the assistance of Daryl Girardin, Marky Ross, Christopher Kamanga, and Renat Ilmer. That was our crew at 23 Kennedy, and as I said, they were assisted by a number of temps and additional workers that we hired throughout this process. And I want to thank the party, particularly Tom Wiebe, who came to us in the middle of this when we were sitting in despair and said, you have whatever you need. Do not ask for something if you need it that you think we may not be able to get it. Our committee can say that there was nothing but support from the party in giving us the resources that we needed. I'd like to thank my two co-chairs, and you've met them when they did the introduction and the thank you to the Premier, Ray Wagner and Liz Reimer. The remainder of the committee consisted of Tom Wiebe, President of the party, Stu Charles, Phil Hood, David Asper, and John Lamb. And I thank them all for the work that they did. So with your permission, we will adjourn for the next 10 minutes to see whether or not we can organize the announcement. I believe that it's ready to go ahead, but we'll need a few minutes to get everything organized and to have everyone that needs to be present to be present. Again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being able to assist in this election committee and this election of the leader. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to take your places, we're ready to conclude this election meeting. We had a counting room where we had our Chief Returning Officer, Tom Wiebe. Scrutineers were in that room from each one of the campaigns. All of the ballots were counted and under the supervision of all of the scrutineers. I'd now like to call upon Tom Wiebe to make the announcement as to the results of the election. Tom?
You know, I stand here and I'm just in so much awe of the talent that is in our party to organize an event. And for me to be able to work with these people and to learn from them, I have become a better person and a better president of the party from what I have learned from all the volunteers that have spent hours and hours and hours working on this, both in the campaigns and from the party side. I am surrounded by fantastic people. When I was, you bet, yes. I'm just going to give a quick shout out to our staff at 23. Countless hours of overtime put in, and many of them are on salary, but didn't question, am I getting paid for this? Never once did anybody ask me that. They just were asked, you know what, we're behind, we need to catch up, and they were there day after day after day. And I just want to give a huge shout out to those people because they're not highly paid staff, they are staff, they've chosen this life, and I thank them. I want to thank both campaigns. Both campaigns were extremely cordial and easy for me to work with. I've spent the last week in the city of Winnipeg. I live in Morden, so I came in and spent a week here just doing what I could do to help make sure that all the loose ends got tied, and never once did either campaign treat me in a way that I felt slighted or that I would like to have that moment all over again. And so I want to say a huge congratulations to both campaigns on running a class act. And so as is the case when we are running nomination meetings, there are no losers, but one person comes out on top. Whether we're running 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, it's always hard to announce that somebody has less votes than somebody else because they've both put heart and soul into this. And this is a historic vote for our party because it is electing the first woman premier of Manitoba. And it is indeed, yes, it is. It is something that I never, ever once dreamt that I'd be doing. Mr. Gertzen, the current premier, said that he never dreamt he'd be the premier. I feel so honored to be able to introduce the first female premier in the province of Manitoba's history. And it is indeed an honor for me to be able to do this today. I'm humbled to be here as the president and the returning officer, and I am very proud of our party today. But my job is to give you the numbers, and that's what I have here for you today. We counted 16,456 ballots today. 82 of those ballots were spoiled ballots. 17 of those ballots we consider disputed. So we keep them off to the side in case the numbers were extremely close. We would then take their team, show them those ballots, and then we would enter them in. But we have 82 spoiled, 17 disputed. For the Glover campaign, there was 8,042 ballots counted for the Glover campaign. It is indeed my pleasure to tell you that there were 8,405 ballots for the Heather Stephenson campaign. The next Premier of Manitoba is Heather Stephenson. Thank you.
Got a feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. 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 That tonight's gonna be a good.
Wow.